we go back to those original memories and we show the brain that it wasn't actually the food that we were looking for. It was the love and connection.
Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, a Core 4 parenting podcast blending soul and science-based strategies to empower pandemic moms like you, raising kindergarten-ready kids. I'm Cara Tyrrell, your host, a lifetime lover of littles, girl mom, early childhood educator, and conscious parenting coach who truly believes that how we connect and collaborate with our kids in the first 5 years is how we raise world-ready kids who will change this world. Do you struggle with choosing the food that you want to eat and having it align with the food that makes your body feel good? Gosh, I know I do. And wanting your children to grow up with really healthy eating habits so they always feel good. Today's guest, Callie Cavanaugh, is here to share her Eat In method. And I bring you some cool guests that have great backgrounds. But this woman, oh my gosh, the way she has blended her experiences through the cross-cultural eating she's done and brought them together in an intuitive way to help you shape your belief systems around food so you can shape your children's belief systems. It's just brilliant. I am thrilled that Callie is here. I am going to let you just soak in this episode, and I cannot wait to hear what impact it has for you as it did for me. Callie, this is a conversation that is so important in the new year. It's 2024, and you have such a cool mishmash of credentials that we're going to get into to help us understand how to be intuitive with our bodies and how to engage with food in a really healthy, intentional way. How did you end up here? I'm just so curious.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Cara. So it's a pleasure to chat with you and hopefully share some of my expertise, wisdom, whatever you call it, with your audience. And yeah, my background is pretty colorful. This could be a very long conversation, so I'll keep it brief. I grew up with just this deep love of food. Like, it was one of those things when I was 5, I was putting on these cooking shows for my friends and family, much before, the Food Network was a thing. And unfortunately, they had to eat some of the things that weren't even edible. They were really good sports.
I love it.
So food has always just been a source of my creativity, play. And it took me to culinary school, which was a really amazing, broadening of all my perspectives in the sense of food. But it was really for me then about my, pursuit of flavor and making things taste good, right? And then it took me to study and work in Italy. And that's really where my relationship with food totally transformed. And I experienced food there as this act of celebration, right? It was completely respected. Like, mealtime was just this thing that was ingrained in their culture where people connected with one another, where they didn't worry about what was on their plate as much in the sense of calories or anything along those lines. There was no fear of food. It was just the joy of food. And it was so cleansing and beautiful. And then I came back to the States and everyone's eating fast food. There was barely time, for me to share meals with others. So it made me kind of have this thing in my mind, like, how can I help, transform that here so we can enjoy our food a little bit more? So long story short, I went into the food world and industry and managed a variety of different organizations, from a deli to a restaurant to an event, kind of center. And then I started my own company called Nona Eats, which was bringing chefs into people's homes. The idea was actually originally to cultivate those intimate dining experiences more on a communal level, having strangers sitting next to each other and creating space for, intimate kinds of new relationships to form. But then 2020 hit. So it kind of transformed to more of a, personal chefing service. And so that was really beautiful. But at the end of the day, what I realized and took away from it was, people were having these beautiful experiences, but they weren't actually, for those 2-3 hours of the meal, they were experiencing that. But outside of that, they went back to their busy, convenient, right, kind of rushed lives. And that there's nothing wrong with this, right? It's kind of like the society that we live in, but I wanted to help on a deeper level. So it took me to creating this methodology called the Eden Method. It's really about redesigning our relationship with food. And I take a lot from my expertise also in interaction design. I have a master's in this thing called interaction design. It's also like user experience. So it has nothing to do with the food world, but it's all about design. And so I kind of utilize that to create something that made like a framework for people, to make it easy to enjoy food on a day-to-day basis, no matter your schedule, no matter your body, no matter your past experiences, right? So we kind of are able to clear some emotional eating patterns or what have you. Everyone has our unique experiences. And once we can kind of clear the slate and show up with joy, like for ourselves and our families, like, right, we can actually create that safe space, which I think is so important, not only for ourselves, but for our little ones, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. You're talking and I'm everywhere, Callie. I'm like, okay, Master Chef Junior. She did this before it was a thing. And then I'm thinking, I'm 100% Italian. I had a nonna. I want to be in Italy. I want nonna eats in my life, right? Like these beautiful threads that connect your journey. And then the human design aspect of it, right? The neuroscience of the fact that we truly do interact with food. Or I guess what's more accurate is probably that food chemically and biologically interacts with us, even if we're not paying attention and interacting with it. So we're going to frame this conversation a couple of ways, right? We want moms to feel really empowered in the new year to take charge of their own food choices for really great reasons and have good results. But we also want to send kids a message and set them up for success to be intentional and conscious in the way that they engage with food so that we create healthy habits from the start, not have to backtrack and rewrite those ones. So where do you want to start? Because this is huge.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig in here. I think actually the second thing you were saying in the sense of creating that space for little ones, right? Like there's so much there. Do you want to lead in any sort of way?
Yeah, I absolutely do. So one of the things that fascinated me when I was reading over your ideas about just using neuroscience to let go of these belief systems that came with us and raise these kids consciously around food is enriching the mealtime connection to reduce the chance of loneliness in the future. And boy, red flags went up for me. And I said, how are the two connected? So can you share with us what this really means? Like if we just sit down and shovel our food into our mouth, even if we're at the same table, are we still promoting loneliness?
Right. Such a good question. Yeah, I think there's a couple different things going on here, right? So number one, like I think there are a lot of people that just live alone right now and they grew up in households, right? They grew up maybe at family mealtime and or in a scenario like you just shared, right? They are at family mealtime, but they're kind of actually isolated in that mealtime, right? Because it's somewhat of there's a personal experience going on there and a collective experience, right? So there's the personal one is kind of the first one, I think, to master, right? And so there needs to be this safety in ourselves first, right? To feel that connection and love for ourselves first and foremost. And if we don't cultivate that with our plates and with our food, right? We're creating this disconnection to life because that's what food is, right? Food is this sense of nourishment, love, care, self-care really is what food is, right? And so if we're not able to feel that with our food, we also don't feel that with our surroundings, with nature, right? Because that's what food is as well. So that also goes with the people that are around us. If we don't create that self-love and care in ourselves, we can't really feel that with the people around us as well, right? So from a young age, if you're not creating that connection and love with your food, right, you're actually potentially more likely to have that loneliness, potentially eating with yourself, and or you're actually, you do cultivate a family, but you feel lonely, right? And so in the future, right, that's kind of what you could be curating.
Isn't that amazing? Oh, so much is flying through my head right now. Okay. My husband's a Marine, ex-Marine. And just last night I said this to him. He filled his plate, went to the table. I filled my plate, got to the table. His was already empty. And I said, wow, there's a race to the finish. And he said to me, I was in the Marine Corps, remember? We got to the chow hall. We had limited time. We had to eat as quick as we could and get back out there. And this is an eating pattern that has never left him since. And that was 20 something years ago. And so this is fascinating listening to you talk, because we really are designing those as we go. When I travel and I'm by myself, I don't honor and respect myself enough to create a nice, healthy plate, even though I could at an Airbnb. I see it as a really great opportunity to eat junk. If I'm being honest, that's how I see it. So these are long-standing patterns, and they just come out. How do we say to ourselves, I choose something different?
Most definitely. This is a really big question. So number one, I want to just touch on your husband, because it brought up a couple of different patterns that I see with a lot of people. So number one, there's actually a fair amount of like scarcity in the way we like relate to food and our plates. And so I'm not sure how your husband was raised. But for a lot of us, there's kind of this like race to see who can get the food in time, right? If there's not enough food on our plates, or we have siblings who are getting to the food, quicker than us, right? Those kinds of patterns can actually manifest later in life. So there's this feeling of like, I need to eat this as soon as possible, right? So yeah, that's one of the patterns that we can kind of debunk amongst many, many others, right? So what I do is this process of neuroscience that really shows our brains. Number one, we have to really like get to an understanding of what pattern is actually showing up in our lives in terms of food, right? So for your husband, he would identify that kind of feeling of needing to eat as quickly as possible, right? And then we could kind of get into that route a little bit quicker, easier, right? But once the pattern's established, you can look at where the pattern came from. So typically this is around like 5 or 6 years old, and there's something that occurred, in our life. And typically there's a fair amount of these similar experiences that happen. And we ingrain a meaning, we take on a meaning with food. So for a lot of people, there's emotional eating. There's a lot of like binging or eating sweets or something, like you're saying, when you're traveling, maybe alone, it's a really easy time, we're feeling lonely, right? So we use food as a way to cope. And when we're young, there's typically experiences where we felt like food was attached to a time where we were experiencing love or connection, right? And that's what we felt when we were eating the food. And so that's what we want to be recreating today, right? So we go to the food thinking, I'm going to have this love and connection that I felt back in the day, right? But what we don't realize today, that's just totally wired in our subconscious, brains. We have no control over this, right? And so today we just eat the sweets or the food thinking we're going to get that love and connection and joy. And instead we're actually just getting the bloating or brain fog or weight gain or whatever those other things come with the food, right? And so in this process called memory reconsolidation, which is neuroscience based, it's actually really painless and simple. It takes about like 10 to 15 minutes. We go back to those original memories and we show the brain that it wasn't actually the food that we were looking for. It was the love and connection, right? And the food was just there. It happened to be there at the same time. But you can actually have that love and connection without the food, right? You can have it with yoga or reading a story or, just simply breathing or what have you, right? So that's a really amazing thing that we get to kind of let go of those patterns. And I use a similar process in neuroscience to also rebuild the self-love and self-care, eliminating specific beliefs. So in those times where we might feel lonely and that trigger for something like food, we actually just feel safe in ourselves, right?
Oh my gosh. I can't even believe what's happening right now. I'm in a little mini therapy session, mamas. This is amazing. So I just figured out why I travel, and that's my urge. It's the inverse of what my childhood experience was. My dad was a superintendent of schools, and he would travel. He would leave. And when it was just me and my mom, we would go to the store and get all the junk food and the frozen pizzas and make the nachos. And it was that loving, connected, shared, we're doing this without dad because he'd never eat this stuff experience. My mind is blown right now. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Blown.
Yeah, I'll just share my own personal experience too. I recently did this process on myself in relation to ice cream, specifically ice cream, right? And so I kind of let go of that craving. And the cool thing about the process is it's not like you're never going to enjoy ice cream again, right? But that like urge and need to like have ice cream for me at the end of a long day when I'm feeling tired is no longer there. And it's kind of like, oh, I can just breathe and like I'm okay to be with myself and I don't exactly need the food, right? And so I shared this process with my mom. She did the same exact one for herself, right? Because when she was little, the end of a long day, her and her parents would have the same, like, let's go watch a show together, kind of connect, but we each get to kind of choose a sweet thing that we enjoy, right? So she would choose ice cream. And so, of course, when I was little, we'd do the same thing and I chose ice cream, right? And so we both had it's the same pattern, just passed down through generations. It's really pretty incredible. So you're saying something similar.
That really is cool. Unbelievable. Hey, Cara here, just popping in to ask you a quick question. Are you dealing with meltdowns? Of course you are. You're a toddler mom. What if there was a tool that could help you manage your own emotions and triggers better, so you can help your child return to center faster inside the meltdown moment? I am so excited to share my free guide with you. I've even recorded audio files. 5 mindful mantras for conscious moms managing toddler meltdowns. Grab it today with the link in the show notes, then download the audios and manage meltdowns consciously. And now I'll bring you back to the rest of the episode. So, as far as sweets are concerned, I think that's a great place to go. All right. Because we really want to support our kids in the autonomy to make that choice when it's appropriate for them as they grow up. When I was sick as a kid, and my mom would always yell at my dad. It's so funny. When I was sick, like the kind you don't actually want to eat, he would always bring home a candy bar for me. When you're better, this candy bar will be ready for you. And when there was a hard emotional moment, or when there was a shot that was pending, right? We say things to our kids like, if you fill in the blank, then we can go get fill in the blank with special food. What are we doing? What type of construction of belief systems around treats are we creating when we bring our kids there that way with food?
Yeah, most definitely. We're just ingraining a pattern. I mean, it's that simple, right? And it's interesting because we think that we're supporting them, right? And so it's okay. That's the intention. And we should probably just think twice when we're using something like food, right?
That in and of itself is a belief that is so ingrained in us. Right. It's a go-to strategy that subconsciously pops up when, as parents, we're in distress because we need something that's going to work.
Yes. So this kind of brings up like we're kind of using food to like increase our mood in some sort of way, right? And there's almost like this space of like not being okay with not being okay, right? Not being okay with not being sick, not being okay with not being angry, right? Fill in the blank. And so if you just insert food, maybe it will make it better, right? Or insert whatever tactic, right? But it's okay to feel sick sometimes. Sometimes we just need the rest to, rejuvenate our bodies, or sometimes it's okay to purge the anger, right? It's okay to have those emotions, and it's okay to give this space to, I know there's some also like restrictive eating, right? And so we support with the same belief elimination process, we support those kinds of behaviors as well, right? Because the adverse of inserting food to support our emotions, there's also don't eat when you're anxious, right? Don't eat to control your body image, right? And that kind of feeling, right? And so there's also this opportunity to let go of that so that kids can feel safe in all of us, right? So we can feel safe in simply wanting food that is nourishing our bodies on a cellular level, right? And following those pure cravings, right? The ones that are innate to our biology rather than our emotions, right? And so when we're clear of those other kinds of, beliefs, then we can actually just follow, our intuition and our intuitive eating. And so I think something that's coming up is like, everyone is very different in how we eat and how, the specific foods that we want and timing of eating. And, it's kind of like ingraining a specific pattern in our little ones might be doing them a disservice. There's really immense power in allowing them to explore the different foods, whether that can be, sweets and ice cream here and there, right? That's what they want in different times. Like restricting them can actually be a disservice, right? So there's that play. That's kind of the most empowering, I think.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about picky eaters then. I have a lot of moms I work with who they already have a high stress level. Their cortisol is through the roof when they get to the dinner table because they already know they're walking into a little bit of a battle zone with their toddler or their preschooler that night. They want their child to eat healthy, nutritious food. They want them to grow strong. And yet this child's palate is just not very diverse yet. How do you coach people to stay true to the relationship with each other and with food so that it's not like you come out of that experience and feel like you survived it every single night? Because that's not a belief system that we want to ingrain.
No, that sounds awful. No survival. Thriving is what we're looking for, right? So when I think about thriving, I think about play once again. I think about exploration. I think about curiosity, right? And so when I personally deal with people that are dealing with picky eaters, right? And I don't mean dealing with, they're experiencing picky eaters, right? And there's typically a lot of like conditioning that's going on. And that can be from society, that can be from school environments, that can also be from our partners, right? Maybe when they were little, they were a picky eater. And so they think that, our toddler only needs insert, a couple foods, right? They're not going to want these yummy greens or carrots or what have you, right? So instead, let's just give them the whatever, hot dogs, French fries, something like that. And so I think number one, that's something to just kind of look out for and be kind to yourself, right? Kind to whatever other noises are coming in that might be creating that narrative in our little ones, right? And it's like, it's not all on you. It's okay if there are other outside noises, right? You can't do anything about those, right? What you can do, though, that feels empowering is kind of leading by example. Number one, what if everyone had to eat the same meal, right? And what if that felt like an exploration, right? Can there be embedded a sense of play in the texture, smell, aroma, color, Food is such a beautiful thing has so many senses, ingrained in it. It's a sensory experience, right? And little ones want to experience new things. So can we ingrain that sense of exploration through those different things and elements with food? And then it doesn't even have to start with eating. It can just start with exploring, right? Mashing, smelling, whatever those things are, right? Start small and it can lead to eating. And then who knows, right? Yeah. And also I think there's actually an element of mindful eating that I bring into this that I think is really interesting because it's very similar for, grown-ups, adults, right? We typically don't actually take the time to eat our food. We just kind of shovel it in like your husband, right? And there's so many of us out there. And so if we can set an example of really truly experience the flavor, the texture, the everything about our meals, we can also kind of start to ingrain that in our little ones too, right? Take our time to smell it. What does it smell like, right? That's an amazing thing that gets our salivary glands, kind of going and ready for digestion, right? So taking really baby little steps, no pun intended, with each food, right? And allowing them to explore it and giving them the space to actually want to try it, right? Whatever that food is. And it doesn't have to be overnight. It can be the smallest little bite. It can be the smallest little anything, right? Just being compassionate with them about what other, outside influences it might be getting about these different foods, giving them the space to kind of have that and also the space to explore when they're ready. And then for yourself in that moment, enjoy your food, right? And know that as you're doing that for yourself, that's being ingrained. That really, the belief elimination process I was sharing about earlier is really about going back to these exact kind of moments where instead of enjoying our food, our caregivers or parents are typically resisting food or feeling disgust with their own food, right? And so we take that on for ourselves. And so in the belief elimination process, we actually let go of those kinds of things, right? So if you simply know that your power is enjoying your own food, enjoying your environment, right? That's all you need to be doing. Give yourself that love and care. And then eventually that will ripple onto your little one. And it might be, it might take a while for that to be embedded in them. Some people don't really actually start exploring foods until like they're in college. And so it's okay. But if you lead by example, you're doing yourself and them a service, no matter when they're ready to explore.
Yeah, that's so spot on, right? This idea that what we model is far more powerful than what we require. I love that because if the requirement is you must eat it before you get down from the table, that's where the battle zone happens, right? That's where the power struggles come into play. But if the modeling is we are all going to sit here together and enjoy this meal until everyone decides they're done, whatever that looks like on your plate, I'm going to sit here and enjoy my meal and interact with you as I do it, because the modeling is just magical and it's invisible. And so it's really hard for us to believe that it's having as strong of a character development impact that it is 100%. Well, Callie, you are magical. I loved this conversation. I'm feeling really inspired because I've had some food moments lately. Both my girls moved out within 3 months of each other. And that was a result of the pandemic. And so I actually premeditated. I'm right there with you, mamas. I am. I premeditated my comfort food. I had it in the house and ready for the days that they moved out. And I was like, the mac and cheese and hot dogs are all mine tonight, people, because that was my childhood go-to comfort meal. But I've really started to feel more empowered in the months since they've left with some I am statements. I just say to myself, I am the type of person now who eats grapes instead of Kit Kats. Because I want the Kit Kat really badly, and Halloween was just here and they were all over the place. And sometimes I still grab them, but I'm really trying to reshape my mindset and my belief system about who I am in relationship to food. So if other people are feeling the same way, you have a redesigning relationship with food digital course. Tell them more about that and where they can get it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cara. Yeah. And this has been really, really wonderful to share. And just so I love how, people that understand this passing along of behaviors and such, it's really nice to kind of be on the same terms with that. So in this course, we've looked really deeply into what are the specific beliefs that we typically carry around our relationship with food. And a lot of them have to do, there's kind of simple self-esteem beliefs, there's some body image beliefs, and there's, like I was sharing before, that specific process in terms of food cravings. And so we've designed some self-paced experiences where you can actually eliminate these beliefs on your own, which is really beautiful. So you have that kind of package where for me, the feeling after eliminating these beliefs is actually like 5 tons of baggage just kind of like let go from my body. And so what comes after that is this ease and space. And when we talk about space to explore, that can be with food, that can also just be shedding of stress, right? And these constructs that we hold from our parents, right? So that opens up the space to actually embed some really beautiful habits, right? And so, of course, in our relationship with food, we have extensive kind of resources that, number one, help you kind of set up your kitchen and your space for enjoying your time in the kitchen, for enjoying time to cook. And that can be with your little ones, with yourself, with your partner, whatever that is. But that's also a place to find love and connection and conversation, right? When we're actually making food. So a lot of the resources in this course support that, that creation of food. And then also the creation of connection around mealtime as well as really beautiful guides in terms of what to eat. That's kind of based around Mediterranean diet and whole foods, right? There's no specific diets or anything like that. It's all just like very exploratory for what works with you and giving you ideas and inspiration to just enjoy food in all these different ways, even at the grocery store, right? So we're kind of taking pain points and alleviating those pain points and opening up space for joy.
Oh my goodness, it's so good. Mediterranean food, sign me up, that Italian heritage of mine. So that link is in the show notes and it's super easy. All you have to do is click through, read, decide if this is right for you. And please make sure that you rate and review the show. Let us know what your aha moments were today. Clearly, I had a few, so I know that you did too. Thank you, Callie, for your time, for your wisdom, for your multicultural food experiences.
Thank you, Cara.
And for all you mamas, until the next episode, stay mindful and proactive as we transform the toddler years.